Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
I'd like to thank Incite Arts for presenting this panel today as part of Desert Festival 2022. We're very proud to have Incite Arts in the building with us and to be collaborating with them in an ongoing manner. And as I'm also chair of Incite Arts, so with that hat on, it gives me great pleasure to welcome you here to the accessibility panel. So we're talking about creating accessible and inclusive events, programs and communications. I believe that Incite Arts is actually leading the way for this nationally, and I'm very proud of that, of our town and of this organisation. So I'll hand over to Lauren and Daisy to run the panel. Thank you.
Thanks, MJ.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. Thanks for coming. It's really nice to see you. So we are, of course, going to start with an acknowledgement to country. Incite Arts acknowledges the Aranda people, the traditional owners and custodians of Mbantua, Alice Springs, where we are based, whose sovereignty was never ceded. We pay respect to elders past, present and emerging, and acknowledge their continuous connection and contribution to land, water and community. We further acknowledge and pay respect to all Indigenous peoples, cultures and countries.
So I spoke to you all individually about access requirements when you all arrived, and thank you for that, and I hope you're all comfortable today. We acknowledge that this live event is not audio described, captioned or Auslan interpreted, but we will endeavour to provide these access features with an online version of the presentation. Please do let us know if you have any access requirements for the online version, and we'll do our best to provide them all for you. We use the word disability, i.e. a person with disability in its social model context, which means that someone has been disabled by barriers or discrimination and not by their impairments. We're going to verbally describe images and also provide written descriptions as well, but if you need further image descriptions in more detail, then please do let us know. Thank you. Just going to introduce ourselves very briefly. My name's Lauren Jones. I'm the Arts and Disability Coordinator and Mentoring Artist for Incite Arts.
I'm Daisy Weller. I do communications.
And the rest.
I'm Lizzie True.
Your mic a little bit closer. This is Lizzie True.
Yes, that's true.
And she is a very important collaborating artist for Incite Arts, as well as spokesperson. Lizzie, can you just tell us where you're from?
Alice Springs.
And can you tell us what languages you speak?
Pidgin Jawa.
Thank you. Just also like to acknowledge our CEO, Janine, who's based in Perth and therefore unable to attend today. Without her, none of these projects would happen. And together, we're attempting to create arts programs, events, and communications that are both accessible and inclusive. And we really hope that our work and actions will assist others in becoming more aware about accessibility and inclusion. Incite Arts enriches the lives of all Central Australians through community-engaged arts practice that is accessible, inclusive and responsive. Incite Arts delivers high-quality, accessible arts programs in collaboration with the communities of Central Australia, focusing on both those who are underserved and those who face barriers to arts engagement.
I'm going to describe this image. This is the Incite Arts one-page document with the Incite Arts logo, which is a depiction and animation of an eye, and it's a light blue crescent sort of shape along the top, and then a ochre-coloured shape crescent around the bottom, and then a black iris. There's a black and white text, and there is an animated desert background with light blue sky, ochre-coloured ranges and a white gum tree. And I think it's beautiful.
I'm just going to talk very briefly to our values rather than reading out the whole image. So our values are listening, collaboration and responsiveness, welcoming, access and inclusion, making, being creative, vibrant and innovative, and enabling, empowering and building capacities. So this panel will discuss briefly the current programs that Incite are running, and in that we will focus on access inclusion, and have a little chat with Lizzie, who is one of our, now they're all important artists, but a very important artist, and have a little bit of a chat to you about
Yes.
the work. You're a little nervous, aren't you? I think
Yes.
we're all a little nervous, that's it.
Yes.
And then we're going to talk about access tips for communications and events as well as the programs. We're then going to do a little short film presentation, which really describes the audio description, or displays the audio description. And then we'll have a little time for question and answers, bearing in mind our CEO, Janine, as I said, isn't here. So anything that we can't answer, we will make sure that we pass on and get back to you. Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit to start with about our current programs that we're running. Just checking that everyone can hear me. They hear nods. Great. So each of the programs that we run are really tendered to on an individual basis. So that depends on the type of program that we aim to run, but also on the individuals that we either plan on being involved or that have asked to be involved. So Unbroken Land is an Incite Arts branded framework, which is a performative community event providing a platform for collective community storytelling. The last one was online because of COVID, but it still happened.
And that's true.
We did
That's true.
made lots of films, didn't we? Which is an incredible way of working. Southern Nalia is an intergenerational Wartbury Women's program facilitating ceremonial song and dance experiences for women and girls, and is something that Janine has, taken, ownership of and can talk more on. I have been mostly involved with the Starts with D program, so I'm going to talk a little bit about that. It's a performing arts ensemble, engaging artists with disability in programs to build skills, co-create, collaborate, and present disability-led performance works. And Lizzie is a member of our Starts with D program, aren't you? So we're going to talk a little bit about this arts and disability component. So I'll do the next slide. Daisy, thanks. So there are about 8 to 10 of you artists, aren't there, with disability who attend weekly sessions.
Yes.
And you all work with various mentors and facilitators creating new and original works. So who have you worked with? You've worked with musicians?
Musicians.
Yeah. Who else? You do movement with me and Miriam.
Dancing.
Mm-hmm. What did you do last week?
Painting.
Painting. What were you painting? Something to wear.
Dress.
A dress. And what was it called? Your song?
I don't know.
Your song dress.
I don't know.
You haven't come up with a name for it yet?
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay. But it came from an idea of yours, which then was created in a song, wasn't it?
Yes.
With a musician.
Yes.
And then from the song, you've then created this dress and this beautiful headpiece, which we were going to show photos, but actually it's secret.
It's
So
secret,
we're not going
yet.
to. We can't show anyone yet, can
I'm
we?
just striking.
I think it is secret.
It's secret.
So it's going to be part of the big project that's going to be shown next year, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. So it's very, very exciting. So talking about how our programs are created, they are all initiated from the artists. The Starts with D artists explain what they want to explore, work on and create, and then we, as mentors, see how we can facilitate those sessions to make it happen.
I'm gonna sneeze.
You're going to sneeze, that's okay. So all the artists are integral to the decisions that are made, and we look at how each artist can have their voices heard, whether that is through the art or through verbal communication. How are programs accessible and inclusive? Logistically, like making sure that the space is accessible for wheelchair access and any other physical needs. Making sure the space is safe and comfortable, the temperature is okay, changing that if necessary depending on what people need. Making sure there are accessible toilets, and including as many multicultural groups as we want to be involved in the programs, and anyone else who wants to be involved, trying to work out how is best to contact them, and maintain contact and change and create those relationships with people. Enabling each group or program to be individual, like I said before, and run according to what is necessary and safe and comfortable for each group, and being aware that those may change depending on what the group is. Asking people what their access needs are, so all people involved in all aspects of your organisation, whether that's office staff or anyone involved in the programmes. Being aware that disability may not, and very often isn't, visually identifiable, so not assuming that people are going to be okay. Also being aware that it might be private or confidential for people. Another thing is enabling physical access to all of our programs, be that physical, but also sort of where, what does it look like, and where are we? Sort of giving people visual prompts of where we are. So there are 2 images up on the screen.
Yes, I love.
You love them.
I love it.
Would you like to describe them? What can you see?
It's disabled.
Yeah, you say,
Person.
you can say what you see, and then I'll add in any more that I think
Yeah.
I can think of. What can you see? So what about
People.
this first one?
That one?
Yeah.
Clients.
Yeah, who is it?
I don't know.
Yeah, you know who that is. Who's that? Your brother.
My brother.
So, this one on the right is a group of young men looking at each other, smiling, and enjoying creating music on the iPad. They're all wearing t-shirts. And 3 of them are wearing baseball caps. This is when they were creating music. And the other one is a group of artists, collaborators, and support persons, all with mixed abilities, and one in a wheelchair, sitting and standing in a semicircle, facing 2 artists in a black box theatre studio. One artist is standing, swaying her arms above her head with a look of wonder on her face. And the second artist is sitting in a chair with arms swaying above their head, facing the first artist. It's a little insight into what our groups look like. Okay. Liz, should we talk to you a little bit? Yeah. So I'm just going to ask a couple of questions. How long have you been working with Incite for?
Long time. Long time.
So I remember you came to see a performance in 2016 where your brother Isaac was in it.
Broken Land.
Oh, was it Unbroken Land? And you watched that and said, I can do that.
I can do that.
Is that what you said?
I don't know. Not really.
I've got it written down that that's what you said.
That's not me.
So you joined in,
Yeah.
and
Sorry.
you've got a very can-do attitude, haven't you? So I can do that, so there you are, you're here. And you've, been here ever since. So you've spoken a little bit about sort of what you've been working on at the moment, but do you want to speak a little bit about where your ideas came from for the project Connect to Culture. So where did they come from? Can you remember?
Acacia Hill.
Hmm?
I don't know.
Yeah,
Is that it?
Say it again.
Acacia Hill.
Okay, so that's where you started? Yeah? And what about...
No, not really. I don't know.
It's okay. What about your... how important language is to you? I remember having conversations really early on when we were making work, and you were talking about how important language was to you.
Hmm.
And we created quite a lot of work based on translating. Yeah? And
Translating.
making
Sign
that
language?
sign language, doing all the Auslan, making it accessible for you but also for other people. And you were trying to teach me Pinjara, weren't you? And I don't know how many times you tried to get me to spell it correctly, and I still can't do it. And that then became a live performance and then film as well. So quite a lot of the work that we're creating that used to be live has now kind of got a more important film element to it, so that it can be shown to families and communities, everyone, people who wouldn't necessarily be able to come and physically watch it can now see it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you can watch yourself.
Watch myself.
Okay, one really quick last question. What is it that you enjoy doing? What do you like to do?
Listen to music.
Listen to music. Great. Thanks, Lizzie.
Yeah, bye.
Should I turn you off and then I can put it back on if I need to?
How to turn it off?
Just that.
Turn off.
Do you want to stay here?
Yeah.
Yeah? Okay.
These are almost all, maybe 2/3 of our Starts with D artists, and they look like they've just had a really good time in a workshop, and yeah, there's always a lot of different feelings that come during our workshops. Lots of fun, lots of music, lots of dancing, among other things, but that's what I've been seeing recently. I'm going to describe this image. Starts with the performance ensemble, standing and kneeling, smiling at the camera after a workshop session. This is me. Snuck up on me. So, yeah, I do communications for Incite Arts, as already spoke about, and educating myself constantly around accessibility. So I'm forever learning and finding it really, really wonderful to learn about and to integrate into as many aspects of Incite Arts as we can, and find ways to do so if we are facing a barrier of actually providing certain types of access requirements. I would like to begin with saying that really Arts Access national, state and territory websites would be your first port of information, because they are the leading organisations and constantly updating those like tips and resources around access in communications. And also, yeah, just to make contact and build relationships and rapport with local or, interstate and national disability organisations, deaf or hard of hearing organisations, multicultural groups. So, just everyone that may be facing barriers and that you want to connect with. The Web Content Accessibility Guidelines. This is kind of this website. It's basically like the benchmark of accessibility in the internet. So they provide guidelines, and in fact, yes, it's a really good place to start in regards to anything that you're putting out there on the internet. So I think this would be a great time to refer to our website, our new wonderful website, which we spent a lot of happy hours creating. With accessibility at the core of the design, and everything about it. We are very happy with it. It'd be great if you wanted to have a look at it sometime, and if you've got any feedback on the usability, readability, accessibility, please do let us know. Or if you just want to tell me it's marvellous, this is also fine. And you can see on the right-hand side in the centre, that's our accessibility widget, which is such a simple and effective way that you can provide all of these really wonderful access options, such as a screen reader, text spacing. There's dyslexia-friendly pause animations, all kinds of great things, contrast, and you don't need to do much at all to install this. There's just an annual fee, and it pretty much just does everything for you. So that's one thing, if you have a website, that I've found really fantastic to be able to provide. And what am I up to now? Thank you for that, Benjamin. Excuse me. A lot of slides. Access tips for digital and print materials and communications. I'll just sort of briefly run through these. They're pretty self-explanatory, but preferably 18 or 13.5 point font size, the minimum of 16 or 12 point, a sans serif style font. Do not use italics. Don't use all uppercase, like block lettering, caps lock lettering. An infrequent use of bold. With line spacing, consider 1.5 or more. And with your colour contrast, be at least 25%. And it's really a simple tool that you can use is just that contrastchecker.com, and you can just enter the colours, and it just tells you straight away what the contrast level is and whether it's an accessible level, which is great. Use image descriptions. I always find this a really nice thing to be able to do, is really look into images and actually it's just you sort of can have a nice time describing some things. I've found a handy tip was to think of like the object, the action, and the context of the image. So object is the main focus of the image. Action describes what's happening, obviously, and the context describes the surrounding environment. And I sort of use that as like my tool for image descriptions. Yeah, audio description. Also a fantastic thing to be able to provide when possible. The wonderful Anders assists us with audio description, and they are based locally and they are qualified, and it's a fantastic service to provide.
Well, I was just going to add in that Anders was trained in South Australia, so it's not something that is that well attended, trained. There aren't that many people doing it. So the fact that we've got them doing it here is fantastic, and trying to find somebody who can do it is great.
Absolutely. Closed and or open captioning used when possible. Auslan used when possible. Unfortunately, we aren't aware of a local Auslan interpreter. We have brought in Auslan interpreters when it's been possible.
There are people in town who speak Auslan or can sign Auslan, and they have assisted us with work that we've done. So we did quite a lot of Auslan for the last project, didn't we? For quite a lot of the films, and trying to add it in, but it wasn't an interpretation because we weren't able to do every single word, because they weren't qualified to teach us every single word. And also it was an artistic sort of expression of Auslan, wasn't it? So it was, we were taught it, and then the movements were sort of changed, and we did what we could with them. But can't remember, what was the river? This one. Yeah. But so they're not currently available as an interpreter in the NT, but it's not as expensive as one might think to get an interpreter in, especially if there are a few events happening, and if I think it's a really important tool to have. My daughter's learning it at preschool now, and if we can start teaching it from a young age, and it just becomes the norm that people get to become more aware of it and more, it's around
absolutely more. Advise on the accessibility of the venue, your venue, project and or event. Provide photographs of your office or venue. Benjamin, if you don't mind, if we could refer to that access page on our website, we can have a little look at an example. So there's a wonderful office inside Red Hot Arts, 67 Bath Street, and as you can see, we've provided some information that venue is wheelchair accessible. Other access requirements such as low lighting or quiet spaces can be accommodated. Please contact us for any other access requirements. And then also transportation. There's a taxi service. The venue has a loading bay at the front entrance, 2 accessible car parking spaces close to our entrance. This just makes it good for everyone to be able to visually have in your mind where you are going. And we can go back to the slides, please. Doing a call out for people's access requirements in the lead up to any projects or events, or your staff even, and arts workers. Braille used when possible. There are multiple providers online for things such as programs and business cards or flyers.
I'll just add into that really quickly, that previous one, the call out for people's access requirements. So we're hoping to run some new workshops starting in October, which will be like a lead up into the Starts with D Performance Ensemble, so more of a workshop-based type program. And we've done quite a lot of work with the disability orgs and it sort of in regard to making sure that we've contacted people and they are aware of what it is that's going on, but also that we're aware of who's attending and what their needs are, physical and otherwise. Just so that when we're doing the sessions, we are aware of everybody's needs and we can meet them as best as we can. So without those sort of contacts that we've got with those other organisations and the relationships that we've got with them, it would make life much more difficult for us and for them. So it's but sort of that building relationships, creating those collaborative spaces. Sorry to interrupt.
No, thank you. These are just some more specific access tips for festivals and events. Again, asking for access requirements when booking patrons, and also asking your artists for their access riders, which is what they're informally called. And strongly consider providing the following: accessible program formats, pre-show notes, visual ratings, and potentially providing a tactile tour for visually impaired persons, which is basically providing a tour of, for example, the set of a production and potentially costumes, and yeah, it can be a lot of fun. Assistive listening, a sensory or quiet room, sensory friendly and relaxed performances at different times than the other performances. These can be, for example, a performance and the lighting isn't turned right down, there's just more of a dim lighting. And noise is allowed to be made during the performance. Content warnings. I think these are quite important. I had a good experience with this recently. I went to a really fantastic performance of an adaptation of Alice in Wonderland. And I was taking my young daughters, and it was an adaptation, and it was at a high school and performed by really great people. And somebody gave me a content warning about a part of the show, and I was very grateful because I was able to discuss it with my daughters prior, and then when it occurred, they were still shocked, but I just reminded them of that content warning and how I explained to them, and they were like, oh, yeah, that's right. And then it was all fine. So, yeah, I think these are marvellous. Provide an online platform to watch the event, either live or recorded like this. It will be recorded, as you know, and which is great because that means our mums are going to be able to see it, we were saying earlier. And this is a resource now, which is fantastic. Yes, consider a sliding cost scale as well for your events. And also provide companion cards, which is a support person gets a free pass ticket, or have access workers to support persons with access requirements. They're sort of like a buddy, an access buddy that can be, a volunteer or paid worker at an event or program or something that's, just there to help.
Just going to describe the image on the screen. So this is a silhouette of 3 people standing in front of a clay pan with the trees silhouetted and a sunset behind. One of them is pointing into the sky.
Shall we play Meet You at the Edge, which is an example of an audio described film, and we invite you, if you feel comfortable, to experience some or all of it, whatever you're feeling, with your eyes closed, to really immerse yourself into the audio descriptive experience. Thank you, Benjamin.
Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander viewers are advised that this video may contain images and voices of people who have died. The Incite Arts logo, Desert Perspectives Limitless Horizons, presents Starts With D Performance Ensemble. In the morning sun, a pair of feet, one resting on the other, swing over red desert sand towards eucalypt bushes. White handwritten letters read, "Meet you at the edge." An Aboriginal man's hand is building a structure with twigs and pushing them into the sand. The man, Brandon, concentrates. Back on the swing, Tiffany, a young Aboriginal woman, clutches the ropes and surges through the air. A Caucasian man, Martin, stands in dappled sun, face tilted up with his eyes closed. His hands gracefully rise and fall around his face. His fingers dance and he opens his eyes. Brandon, Tiffany and Martin are together in a park in Alice Springs, all in jumpers and shorts, moving in the sunlight. Tiffany's feet swing over red sand. In her red jumper, she walks slowly through waist-high dry grass near a rusted-out truck and runs her hand over the ridged surface of a large tyre. White paint peels away from the rusted red metal of the truck and weeds grow in the crevices. Tiffany looks inside the cab of the truck, peering past the steering wheel and out the window to the desert scrub beyond. Lying almost hidden in the long grass, Tiffany's arms and hands are raised. She moves her hands crossed at the wrists like the wings of a bird, then traces the lines of mountain ranges in the air with her finger. She folds her hands one over the other. A rusted surface in dappled light. Back on her feet, she walks through the long grass and disappears behind the truck. Brandon sits outside, eyes downcast as he concentrates on the stick construction. Now, in his bedroom, he snaps a twig between his fingers and places the pieces in a pile on the bed. Sitting cross-legged, he reaches over to a stereo and plugs in a headphone jack. He puts on the headphones. He presses play and turns up the volume. Standing now, he holds his hands to the centre of his chest and starts to dance with his eyes closed. Instantly, he's outside, standing between tall speaker stacks in front of a rocky escarpment. In the desert landscape with a clear blue sky above him, he dances hip-hop style, grinning. He takes centre stage on the cement platform and grooves with his chest, neck, arms and hips. He continues dancing on the concrete platform in front of a decaying structure on El Papa Road. Back in the bedroom, he takes off the headphones, picks up a large stick and walks, head down, out the door. The headphones rest on the stereo system. In dappled light under trees, Martin turns his face to the sun and holds his hands with palms upturned. He gazes at one hand and draws it towards his face. He He bends at the waist, then straightens up, gazing at his hands, moving them like the wings of a bird. With his eyes closed, he moves his hands down in waves, fingers extended. His right arm gestures up in a circle. Martin stands on the tracks in front of a heritage train engine, the GAN, and moves his hands like the wheels of a train. Staring ahead, he walks slowly forwards along the train tracks that run through Alice on their way from Adelaide to Darwin. Tiffany walks slowly in the shadow of a rocky hillock. Her fingers move against a backdrop of red rock. Under a rocky ledge, she uses her hands to explore the corrugated textures of the ochre-coloured cave. She walks her fingers inside the crevices. Her dark eyes follow the movements of her hands. On top of a red sand dune, Tiffany pours sand from one hand to the other as a breeze blows her long curly hair in front of her eyes. She uses her fingers and thumb to mark the sand, then wipes the marks away with her palm, pouring more sand through her fingers. As a cloud of dust from a car rises in the distance, Tiffany stands, then rolls down the sand dune, using her elbows as brakes. Still clutching a long stick, Brandon walks past a wire fence, running the stick along the wire. He trails the stick along a concrete path as he passes a prickly pear bush and turns a corner out of sight. Martin rests his back against a tree trunk with eyes closed. He opens them. There are two large birds, white spoonbills, wading in shallow water. One bird searches for food in the wet, red sand at the edge of a clay pan. In the distance, across the muddy water of the wide, shallow clay pan, Brandon, Martin and Tiffany walk towards one another. Their tiny figures dwarfed by the escarpment of the West Macdonnell Ranges that rise behind them. The three move closer and closer. The surface of the water ripples slightly in the wind. Finally, they meet. They join hands and turn to face the water. Hand in hand, they walk forward to the edge of the clay pan. Martin, on a small sandbar, takes Tiffany and Brandon's hands as they step onto the sandbar to join him. Standing in a line, they each bring their hands together, repeating the bird hand dance. Then back to back, Martin and Tiffany lift their heads to the clear blue sky. Brandon closes his eyes. The sun is starting to set. All three stretch out their hands, pointing their index fingers and moving their arms to trace the outline of the West Macdonnell Ranges, known as Yeparenya caterpillar dreaming. Bending forward, arms dangling, they lift back up, extending their arms and tracing the horizon. As they stand back to back once more, the sun sits low in the sky. Gently, with eyes closed, they lean their heads back so they're touching. In the desert twilight, their silhouettes can be made out against the ranges, a cluster of trees and the dry reeds of the clay pans. Brandon's arm continues to rise and fall, tracing the ranges in the failing light as they diminish into the landscape. Crisp reflections appear in the water's mirror surface as the last light of day flares gold on the horizon. Then fades to black. Co-creators and performers Tiffany Malthouse, Brandon Williams and Martin Armstead. Concept and direction Kat Worth, assistant direction Miriam Pickard, original composition Stephanie Harrison, camera and edit Matt Woodham, project manager and costume Philomena Harley. Thanks to Alice Springs Airport Anadeka Garden, Garn Preservation Society, Annika Rose, Virginia Hayden, Janine McKay, Acacia Hill School, Luratipa Aboriginal Corporation, Jen Standish White at Lokathula, Life Without Barriers, CASA Inc., Centralian Senior College, Learning Central and the Road Transport Historical Society. Funded by the Australian Government through the Australia Council for the Arts and the Regional Arts Fund, proudly sponsored by the Northern Territory Government. Incite Arts, Desert Perspectives, Limitless Horizons.
I love that film and audio description and beautiful music composition and singing by Stephanie. So
Yeah.
here we are.
Get back to talking now after watching and listening.
Come back into my body.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the key it is a bit chilly. I think the key thing is to note that we're not professionals in this, or we wouldn't class ourselves as professionals in this. We are still educating ourselves, like Daisy said earlier, all the time, daily, on how to make all of our programs, events, festivals, everything that we do more accessible and inclusive for everybody. And we note that this is challenging, and we want to help support others in the process as well. And it's not saying that we have all the answers at all, but it's saying that we are looking for any answers that we don't have, and constantly questioning it and constantly asking whether what we're doing is enough and correct and inclusive. And I think access and inclusion has quite often been put in that too hard basket. And it's really important that it's not anymore, and that we do all make a real concerted effort to look for those resources that can help us, spend the time and the money doing what Daisy and Nico and Janine have done, and create an incredibly accessible, amazing website. Putting access and inclusion in your budget for everything that you do, rather than it being a last minute thought. Oh yeah, well actually we should probably do that. Oh no, wait, we don't have any money for it. Making it a thought from the very start that this is what we need to do, and what do we need to make that happen? And not being afraid to ask. I think that's been a big thing for us.
Absolutely.
Seeking advice and education, and not feeling like you're not doing the right thing if you ask somebody, because we're never going to know unless we ask.
So yeah, start the journey.
I'll describe the image on screen. So there is a photograph of a group of young persons standing in profile, watching a performance and clapping, and one of them is wearing traditional Indian dress.
Like we've said, if you want any more info or accessible formats of today's presentation, or any of the image descriptions, or any other access requirements, or any more info about today or anything else, please contact us. We'd love it.
Just come in for a chat.
You can come in. We're just in here in Red Hot Arts. Or shoot us an email or text or call, or we've got some further resources on our website, on our access page. One in particular that is awesome is Melbourne Fringe have a producer's guide to access, which is this really awesome, thanks Benjamin, I forgot to refer to it earlier, guide. I think you opened it in an, it's a comprehensive and really easy to read guide, and it covers so much, and it's just wonderful. So I've got a link to that on our website, among a few other resources that are great. Thank you. So
I think just to very important wrap up, we'd just like to say a huge thank you to Desert Festival, to Red Hot Arts for having us, and HCCC Community Radio for doing all of everything last minute. It's been amazing, and thank you, Lizzie. We are both very aware that this is quite an intimidating space to be inhabiting, so I'm extremely proud that you sat here, and thank you for being part of it, because you're important. Lastly, has anyone got any questions?
oh yes, the Q&A.
I've got a microphone over here, so we
good.
can record them. Has anyone got a question?
Don't feel like you have to ask any questions.
I think there's a question from Virginia.
Yay, Virginia.
How important is it when you are considering recruiting professional arts facilitators to the programs? How do you assess whether a potential facilitating artist is going to be right for the fit?
Good question. I think, going from my experience, it's been a lot of talking to that person beforehand and exploring what their thoughts and ideals and perspectives are on what it is that we're doing. What, as a kind of foundation level, that they feel is important when you're creating work. For example, is it important to create a perfect performance at the end? Is it important that the process is more of more of the drive, more of the kind of focus of the project? And depending on what they say, it kind of depends on where they might fit. But it then also comes down to sort of working within the group as well, doesn't it? You're quite especially when you're working with sort of Starts with D, as a group, there, you know what you want as a group in the most polite way, and they will say as a group whether they get on with somebody or not. And I think that fit is really important, and listening to the group and noticing how the group respond as well. So having that awareness of and knowledge of the group that you're in, as to whether that fits too. So kind of a mix of both, and then also getting feedback from the artist, from the sort of mentor as well. So what is kind of seen as an ideal to start with might change. So listening and taking on board what everyone says. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Yeah. Thanks, Virginia. I have a question about the next project for Starts with D. I hear it's called Strong Feelings. Could you tell us a bit about it?
Yes.
little bit.
Okay, I'm not. I have. Yeah, Daisy, you will stop me if I say too much.
I will. Don't worry.
What I'm allowed to
You
say
go,
and what I'm not
and
allowed
I'll
to
help.
say. Because I get quite excited about it. So Strong Feelings initiated from the artists. And we had a big chat about what project they wanted to do next, and it came about from them saying that they have a lot of strong feelings, stories, experiences that they want to share. And so this big project, Strong Feelings, has come about, and it's multidisciplinary, multi-art, and it's going to be, initially it was going to be a live performance in August, but then COVID helped stop that. Actually, to our advantage, because it means that it's now going to be something else.
I'm intrigued.
I get the look from them. Yeah, so it's very exciting and involves lots of artists and lots of mentors.
So can you tell us when we might be able to come along to the performance, or when can we
I tell them
expect to
that?
see?
Absolutely.
Okay, great. Next year. March next year.
So we'll stay tuned to your website
Yes.
and socials.
Yes.
All right. I've got Emmy with me who's got a question.
I don't know if this is in the realms of what you can answer, but the point about including a budget line for access, who nationally is providing funding for that sort of thing for events and programming?
Thank you very much for that, because that was probably the one question we were one key question we're anticipating that we will need to segue to our CEO, Janine Mackay. She is a wealth of knowledge in that area, and she would love to help you and talk to you about that. So please do contact her.
Can I step in with a little?
Yeah, I was going to say, Andrea
just
might know a
my
bit more.
funding hat on.
Yes.
I think applications that we looked at Regional Arts Australia certainly were considered that had accessibility as a line. It's certainly something that was encouraged, but it doesn't come from the funding bodies necessarily. It comes from the organisation putting that forward.
Yeah, I think I'd second that just from what Janine's been saying, that that is not enough, and it needs to happen more, and it is coming from the organisations to sort of have to put that forwards, rather than it being someone specific who's doing it.
So I guess just to be clear, that's within a project budget that might have other lines like artist fees and arts workers, including a line for accessibility, but I'm not personally aware of any accessibility funding separate to project funding.
I just I have had a little bit to do with the deaf community over the years, and not in terms of a funding point of view, but I do wonder if maybe the specific bodies that represent each sort of access point might even have incentives for like interpreters or signers and that sort of thing. It's something I'm going to look into.
Absolutely. Yeah.
My contribution there is the more it's requested and identified, the greater is going to be the positive financial response.
Yeah, definitely, and the more that it's talked about and the questions are asked as well, sort of where does it come from, where what's happening, what's going on, and I think that we're stepping the way forwards in making sure that it's happening.
Thank you so much. I think that's all the questions from the audience. I would encourage the audience to get online and look at the Unbroken Land videos as well. Lizzie did some wonderful work in Unbroken Land online 2020, 2021. And just a personal thanks to the two of you, to Daisy and Lauren, and also to Lizzie. It is a big thing to sit here under lights and talk, and I'm very grateful that you've come today and part of the Desert Festival. So thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Marvellous audience.